This is massive. This is something that we have not seen quite often. Just the flood wave, the amount of water that was gushing through these valleys is going to have a major impact for significant amount of the time down the road.
On the morning of August 26, 2026, the sky above Rasuwa district was clear. There had been no storm. Nepal's Department of Hydrology and Meteorology later confirmed there had been no heavy rainfall in the area at all in the hours before what happened next. The monsoon was active elsewhere in the country, but not here, not that morning. Then, 70 kilometers upstream, a piece of the Himalaya let go. What came down the valley was not a flood in any way that word normally means. It was a wall of water, pulverized ice and rock moving at an average of 193 kilometers per hour. In the Trishuli River, the water rose 9 meters in 30 minutes, 30 feet, in half an hour. It was violent enough that seismographs picked it up first as a 4.4 magnitude earthquake. By the time it stopped, it had destroyed the only overland gateway between Nepal and China, a border crossing that most of the world has never heard of, in a valley that geologists admit almost nobody was watching. This is the story of a corridor that took decades to build, 20 minutes to erase, and why the warning system designed to prevent exactly this saw nothing at all. To understand what was lost, you have to understand where it was. Nepal is a landlocked country wedged between two of the largest nations on Earth. To the south, India, with an open border, shared language regions and centuries of trade. To the north, China, separated by the highest mountain range on the planet. Of modern history, that northern border was effectively theoretical. The Himalaya is not a wall you negotiate with. Nepal's trade ran south, almost entirely, and that dependency has shaped its politics for generations, which is why the Rasuwagadhi Gyirong crossing mattered so much. It sits in a narrow gorge in Rasuwa district, immediately south of the Chinese border, where the Lende Kola tumbles down to meet the Bote Koshi. On the Chinese side is Gyirong port, a modern trade and customs complex, the major gateway for goods and tourists moving between the two countries. This was Nepal's northern door, not one of several, the main one, and it existed in a place where a road has no business existing. The valley is steep-sided and confined. The gradient is brutal. Everything here, the customs buildings, the bridges, the hydropower infrastructure, the settlements of Timure and Syapru Besi, was built into a gorge because a gorge was the only gap the mountains offered. That geometry is what made the corridor possible. It is also exactly what killed it. Near the peak of Langtang Lirung, on the border itself, a section of glacier roughly 2,000 feet wide broke away from the mountain. A similar-sized section of rock next to it went with it. A photographer on the Chinese side heard it before he saw it. The mass fell roughly 7,000 feet, vertically, into the river below. It left a gash in the mountainside 3,000 feet across, visible from orbit within a day. Here is what makes this different from the disasters this region is used to. A monsoon flood builds. You can watch a river rise over hours, sometimes days. There is time, however little, to move. This was not that. This was a mass of ice and rock converting 7,000 feet of vertical drop into horizontal speed, and then picking up everything the valley had to offer on the way down. Mud, boulders, trees, bridges, the steep, narrow shape of the gorge, the same shape that made the road corridor possible, funneled and accelerated it. Jeffrey Cargill of the Planetary Science Institute calculated that the flood wave covered the first 22 kilometers at an average of 193 kilometers per hour. For the settlements downstream, that is not a warning window. That is not enough time to reach a doorway. Scientists are being careful about what they call this. The easy label is glacial lake outburst flood, a well-known Himalayan hazard, where a meltwater lake bursts its natural dam. But the evidence doesn't fit that cleanly, and researchers have pushed back on the description. What appears to have happened is a chain, ice and rock instability high on the mountain, a massive collapse. That collapse hitting and temporarily obstructing the river, water and sediment mobilized at enormous scale. Then release, and a flood that transformed as it moved, feeding on the valley itself. Not one event, a cascade. Each stage making the next one worse. Here is the part that should unsettle you. This region was not unmonitored. Chinese and Nepalese scientists had maintained a joint flash flood early warning system in this border area for years. It worked. It had a record, credited with consistently preventing casualties over its operating life. On August 26th, it detected nothing in time. The reason is a design assumption. The system relied primarily on water level monitoring, gauges reading the height of the river. That technique is dependable for the floods this region expects: monsoon floods, perennial seasonal flooding, events that build over hours. It is far less dependable for a flash flood arriving at 193 kilometres per hour, with no rain behind it. And there's a second, bleaker possibility. A France-based geomorphologist suggested the sheer volume of water may simply have destroyed the sensing gauges outright. The flood disabling the warning system as it passed, before the warning could travel ahead of it. But the deepest problem wasn't the hardware. A senior fellow at the Stimson Center pointed out that this specific stretch of border was a monitoring blind spot, a region geologists had paid comparatively little attention to. Not because it was unimportant, because there is so much Himalaya and so few people watching it. The mountains here are 3,000 kilometers long. The number of valleys with glaciers hanging above inhabited settlements runs into the hundreds. Number under close, continuous scientific observation is a small fraction of that. Rasuwa was one of the gaps. It had a trade corridor, hydropower, border infrastructure, tourists and towns, and it was, scientifically speaking, a place nobody was looking very hard at. The wave did not stop at the border. It ran down the Hendakola into the Botekoshi, and from there into the Trishuli, one of Nepal's major rivers, and the one that carries water toward the country's populated center. In Rasuwa, the settlements of Timure and Syapru Besi were among the worst hit. Further downstream, it reached into Nuwakot and Dhading districts. Homes, roads, bridges, vehicles, hydropower installations, the flooding affected dozens of settlements along a 72-kilometer stretch of river. It carried the bodies of some victims as far as 240 kilometers from where they died. Rasuwa was not only a trade route, it was a trekking route, the gateway to the Langtang Valley, one of the most popular high-altitude regions in Nepal, in the middle of the tourist season. Of the people reported missing in the days after, hundreds were foreign tourists from more than 30 countries. Search and rescue ran by helicopter because the roads that would have carried rescuers in were the same roads the river had taken. And the danger did not end. A lake formed behind debris left by the landslide, and there are fears that if it breaches, it floods again. Additional rainfall in the days after threatened to destabilize already saturated soil. The Rasuwagadhi crossing will be rebuilt. Nepal cannot afford for it not to be. A landlocked country does not give up its second door, but it will be rebuilt in the same gorge, because the gorge is still the only gap. That is the uncomfortable geometry at the center of this story. The features that made a corridor possible here, the narrow valley, the steep drop, the single navigable line through the mountains, are the same features that make a cascading flood catastrophic. You cannot have one without accepting the other. You can only watch more carefully. And across the Himalaya there are dozens of valleys with the same shape, the same infrastructure creeping up them, and the same thin scientific coverage. Rasuwa was not unusually vulnerable. It was ordinary. It was just the one that happened. As of the date of this recording, the